Modern life is defined by a paradox. We possess unprecedented technological capability to manipulate our environment, yet feelings of anxiety and helplessness are at an all-time high. We live in a society that promotes external control over wealth, reputation, health outcomes, but most important, the opinions of others. And we suffer immensely when the inevitable chaos of the universe breaches these carefully constructed external defenses. The psychological crisis of the 21st century is the profound gap between what we believe we should control and what we can control. Into this chasm steps Stoicism, the ancient Hellenistic philosophy that, rather than offering strategies for world mastery, provides a radical framework for self-mastery. Stoicism restores control, not by changing the world to fit our desires, but by rigorously defining the only domain truly available to us, the landscape of our own judgments, intentions, and volitional responses. It is a philosophy that transforms the pursuit of external power into the attainment of internal sovereignty. The foundation of the Stoic doctrine is the dichotomy of control, a principle articulated most clearly by the former slave and teacher, Epictetus. He begins his Enchiridion or handbook with the unambiguous statement, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us." Epictetus categorized the former, the things that are unequivocally under our direct control, as our opinions, impulses, desires, aversions, and, crucially, all our own actions. These are internal, volitional, and sovereign to the individual mind. Conversely, things not up to us include our body, property, reputation, health, and everything that is ultimately the work of nature or fate. The Stoic insight is that the source of human suffering is the categorical error of mistaking what belongs to the not up to us category for what is up to us. When an individual invests their emotional energy, peace of mind, and sense of self-worth in securing an external outcome, such as a promotion, a cure for an illness, or the approval of a peer, they are, by definition, handing over their sense of control to an unstable, unreliable, and often malevolent external factor. The Stoic, through constant reflection on the dichotomy of control, reclaims that energy. By ceasing to obsess over the outcome of their efforts and focusing entirely on the quality of their effort and intention, they ensure that the most important element of life, their moral condition, is always secure. This shift transforms frustration into tranquility, because peace becomes dependent only upon self-discipline, which is inherently controllable. This process of radical self-focus leads to the construction of the inner citadel, a concept popularized by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations. The inner citadel is the fortress of the mind, the private, impenetrable core of the self, where true human flourishing eudaimonia resides. Aurelius saw it as the one place a person could always retreat to and find repose, regardless of the tumult of the imperial court or the battlefield. The key to building and maintaining this citadel is the careful protection of one's ruling faculty, known in Stoic terms as the proheiresis. The proheiresis is the moral faculty of choice, the unique capacity to determine one's attitude and intentions towards external events. In Stoic philosophy, the proheiresis is the only true good, the only possession that cannot be alienated, corrupted, or taken away by fortune. A person can lose their wealth, their health, their family, and their freedom, yet their capacity to choose a virtuous, rational response to that loss remains intact. Control, in this context, is not about preventing harm. It is about choosing the moral quality of the response to harm. By dedicating oneself to guarding this inner fortress, the Stoic achieves a state of self-sufficiency. They become psychologically invulnerable, because their highest value is not the stability of their environment, but the stability of their character, a stability that is entirely self-determined. The mechanism by which the Stoic applies the dichotomy of control is through the disciplined management of judgment, perhaps the most powerful tool for reclaiming control. The Stoics recognized that external events, what they called indifference, are inherently neutral. Pain, wealth, poverty, and illness are not good or bad in themselves, they merely exist. Suffering arises only when we attach a value-laden judgment to the event. As Epictetus stated, what upsets people is not a thing, but their judgment about the thing. When we judge a job loss as a disaster, we suffer. When we judge it as an unavoidable event that presents new opportunities, we act. To gain control, the Stoic employs a technique known as assent. Every impression the mind receives, the sight of an unexpected bill, the sound of an insult, the feeling of fear, is simply raw data. We gain control by inserting a deliberate gap between the initial impression and our intellectual agreement, assent to its content. This gap allows for rational scrutiny. Is this impression true? Is it rational? Is this truly a disaster, or merely an inconvenience? By withholding immediate, unexamined assent to negative judgments, we prevent the chain reaction of destructive emotions that otherwise steals our control. The moment a person realizes that their anxiety about a future event is not caused by the event itself, which has not happened, but by their current, voluntary judgment about the event, they regain the power to change their mind, and thus, to change their emotional state. The overarching goal that makes this pursuit of control worthwhile is the attainment of virtue as the sole good. The Stoics defined virtue primarily through four cardinal traits: wisdom, practical knowledge of what is good, bad, and indifferent; justice, fairness in dealing with others; courage, facing difficulty with rational resolution; and temperance, self-control, and moderation. These virtues are the only things they considered inherently and unequivocally good. All externals, health, money, and status, were mere preferred indifference, useful for living well, but ultimately irrelevant to true happiness. This definition of the good is a masterpiece of psychological control. Since virtue is an internal state defined by one's intentions, it is perpetually and perfectly controllable. A soldier can perform a courageous and virtuous act, even if they are killed in the process. A pauper can demonstrate justice and wisdom, even in deep poverty. By making virtue the sole criterion for a good life, the Stoic places the entirety of their fulfillment within the domain of the dichotomy of controls up to us category. They are impervious to the fluctuations of fortune, because fortune can only affect the indifference, never the one true good, their character. This reframing grants an unparalleled degree of psychological security and self-command, as one's fundamental worth can never be threatened by forces outside the inner citadel. Beyond the internal self, the Stoic also applies control to the most frightening external reality, the vast, impersonal forces of the cosmos, fate, and necessity. This is achieved through the practices of amor fati and sympathia. Amor fati is not passive resignation. It is the radical, active acceptance and even appreciation of everything that happens. Seneca taught that one should not just endure what fate decrees, but love it, recognizing that the universe is a fully integrated system where every event, even painful ones, is necessary for the integrity of the whole. This love of fate is a powerful psychological tool for control because it eliminates the time and energy wasted on resentment and regret. When a crisis occurs, the non-Stoic wastes crucial resources asking, "Why me?" or "Why did this happen?" The Stoic, having cultivated amor fati, asks instead, "Since this has happened, how can I use it virtuously?" They view misfortune not as a random punishment, but as a morally neutral training exercise designed to test and strengthen their preparedness. By accepting the inevitable as necessary, the Stoic transforms the most crushing external power fate into a source of internal strength, thereby controlling their experience of it. Finally, Stoicism gives back control through the practice of premeditatio malorum. This is the deliberate, rational exercise of contemplating worst-case scenarios: the loss of a job, a natural disaster, personal illness, or the death of a loved one. Far from being morbid, this mental discipline is a preventative measure against the shock and paralysis that steal control during a genuine crisis. By systematically imagining these misfortunes, the Stoic does two things. First, they habituate their mind to the reality of change and loss, robbing these events of their paralyzing novelty. Second, they rehearse their virtuous response. For instance, rehearsing job loss allows the Stoic to determine, in advance and rationally, that the proper response is not panic, but to update their resume, treat former colleagues fairly, and search for new opportunities with resolve. When the event actually occurs, the emotional mind has already been overridden by the rational plan established earlier. Control is thus injected into the future by rational thought in the present. This preparatory mental work ensures that the Stoic is always ready to intercept the emotional surge, maintain their composure, and choose the highest quality action available, regardless of the quality of the external circumstances. In conclusion, the Stoic philosophy does not offer a superficial promise of external domination. It offers something far more profound and reliable: internal sovereignty. By adhering to the three pillars of Stoic practice, the dichotomy of control, the discipline of assent, and the subordination of externals to virtue. The individual systematically dismantles the illusion of external control and repositions their entire self-worth within the sphere of their own will. The result is a profound, unshakable freedom. To be a Stoic is to recognize that while the world may rage and the unpredictable waves of fortune may crash against the shore, the captain of the soul remains firmly at the helm of the proheresis, controlling not the storm, but the quality of the navigation. This is the ultimate reclamation of control, the realization that one's happiness and moral integrity depend not on the fragile stability of the environment, but on the unbreakable strength of the self.